3,000.
What is doing? I hate doing it, but I'd like everyone to like, subscribe, share the content. Sharing is really important. If you like the content that I'm bringing you with the 3000 podcast, you want to help us grow, make sure you do all that stuff. Follow us on Instagram, like, subscribe, share, do all that good shit. Now to the episode.
3,000.
What is doing? My name's Maloney. This is the 3000 podcast. I'm joined today by a musician, a musical instrument manufacturer, designer.
Correct.
Yeah. And a member of the Cave Clan. Big Ears, thanks for coming.
Thank you, Maloney.
Is that a succinct way to introduce you? You're a musician and a musical instrument maker.
Yeah. Well, when I grew up, I learnt to play guitar badly. I could never hold bar chords and things. Always wanted to be a drummer. Parents wouldn't buy me a drum kit, so ended up making my own instruments to compensate.
There you go.
Yeah, and then trying to build stuff that sort of like relates to my body, relates to me, you know?
They say necessity is the mother to all invention. You wanted something to bang and you fucking made it.
Yeah, the first ones were pretty much banging on bits of metal that I had arranged in a little frame. And then when I went to art school, that was great because you start to learn how to make things with different materials. And I started off with ceramics, but then went into the metalwork department because I was listening to a lot of industrial music in the 80s. So that would have been like 87, 88.
So hang on. This is interesting. 87, 88.
Yeah, around then.
Where is a young Big Ears finding industrial music?
Well, that was at a very a special shop. I would call it a special shop. There's been a couple in Melbourne called Pipe Imports. And that was in the Nicholas building in the city, and the person that ran it, they were a bit mad, in a good way.
So how do you even find that in 87?
When you're at art school, you're trying to find out everything. You know, you're very inquisitive. I would have been 18, 19, fresh from the country, Gippsland, Yarram, and you want to know everything, don't you? So there was people listening to industrial music at art school. I'd seen it on TV once, actually, before I left home, and I thought, oh, what's this? You know, people banging on car bonnets, and then later I got my hands on this very famous publication called Industrial Culture Handbook. I was going to bring that today. I was going to show that. And that had in there a lot of American artists. Another Australian band called SPK were featured in there, and that's when I started to listen to industrial music.
And so for people that aren't familiar with industrial music, how would we describe it? Sort of, industrial is a great word because it does describe it, but there's a lot of metallic sounds. There's a lot of banging, clanking, echoes.
Yeah, utilisation of junk. Using tape decks was sort of one of the first iterations. The first performance of what you may consider industrial music happened around 1913, 1912, something like that, where... now I've got to get this person's name. Do you edit out mistakes?
I can if you really want me to.
Yeah, because I just hate getting people's names wrong when I'm quoting artworks.
Okay. Well, like the music, this is raw and pretty unedited.
Yeah. Well, that is my phone to cheat.
Yeah, of course.
So this was a performance that was held over a whole entire city.
Yep.
And
in 1912.
Yep.
Wow.
And it's in the history books. It's well known. I just can never remember the person's name.
Yeah. What country are we talking?
Now, this is what I got also confirmed if it was Russia or Poland. I think the performance was in Poland, and it's called the Symphony of the Sirens.
Which is still, like, over 100 years later, is still a really cool name.
Yeah. I've typed it in the damn maps, haven't I? Because I've just got here.
Technology. All right, we'll chop this little bit. So let's you get it to the name, and then I will I'll throw back to you.
Sorry, I won't do
You're
this
right.
again. Okay,
No, that's
I
okay.
promise.
That's okay. And then I'll.
Here it is.
Okay. All right. So hang on. Put the phone away.
Yeah.
All right. And keep your glass if you want to. All right. And just take the cover off there. All right. So, how do you found yourself a very important piece of music? You were saying.
Well, I didn't know about it at first. The first industrial piece of music that I came across would have been Descended Neubauten and the album Drawings of OT. The first track is called Vanadium I Ching, and it features people or somebody throwing spanners onto the ground, and it's got this very kind of musical, chromatic kind of sound, which is very jagged. And it's sort of like a breakaway from what you would normally hear in equal temperament music, like a normal scale. And so another piece of music was this one, Symphony of the Sirens, Soviet composer Arseny Avramov.
Right, Symphony of the Sirens, which is a great name.
And it was done in Baku in 1922, then later in Moscow in 1923 to celebrate the October Revolution.
Right.
And foghorns were used, factory whistles, factory sirens, gunshots, cannon shots, and he directed it from a building using flags. And it's one of the first known instances of industrial music. And perhaps you could say it's noise as well.
And that is something that for people without the refined industrial music palette like yourself would say it's noise.
Yeah, or you could say perhaps musique concrète. So musique concrète uses tape decks. You go out into the field, you record a train going past, you record, a factory pounding away, take it back into the studio and rearrange that tape into maybe a series of tapes. You might use a mixer to mix it all down. And the use of machinery as opposed to using traditional instruments is probably one of the key features of industrial music.
Mm-hmm. And this is something that I often think about personally when I think about music. Somewhere along the line, people decided this is the structure of music. It generally goes in fours. Who decided that, and why did that become the norm?
There was a big discussion which everyone was out of tune. So when the tuning fork was invented, that sort of held tunes in a physical way through the fork, the length of the fork, because pipe organs, for example, were going out of tune because they were used that much. The air would literally wear away at the tin. Tin's a soft metal. They'd retune them and it'd get shorter in the pipe. So it'd make the tones of the organ go up, so then they're out of tune compared with that organ in the next city. So an A for Handel would have been different to an A for, say, Mozart or somebody like that. So that system was kind of standardized via the tuning fork, and that was a German thing. A guy was eating his meal, dropped it on the table, the fork rang out, he thought, ooh, there's a nice tone. And that's what you get, those fundamental kind of pure tones when you bang tuned metal.
So that way we figured out the rules, but you're all about breaking the rules. For
sure. It's sort of, because I'm into, industrial sounds, and they mainly contain lots of noise, rhythms that are abrupt, they might not be in sync. You're using background noise that's unintentional. It's almost an anti-music.
Yes.
But I don't like to use that term because I'm not anti-music, I'm just right into noise.
Yeah.
I couldn't have gotten into noise if I didn't listen to music.
Yes.
In the first place when I was a kid,
It's almost like people that are satanic sort of believe in God.
Yeah. Does
that make sense?
Well, that comes from Saturn, actually.
Okay.
They were Saturnists originally.
Yeah.
There's this weird thing, because Saturn's actually right in the east at the moment. If you look out, you see that big star, or that planet that doesn't flicker. That's Saturn at the moment.
Right now. Are we in like a Saturn retrograde or something like that? Is that
Not really sure, but whenever I see Saturn, I'm always like, what is that? And it took me a few years to work out, that's what that celestial body is in the sky that I can see.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, and that also, I've just seen a recent, because I'm a YouTube junkie actually, don't sort of tell many people that, but I love docos.
Yeah.
I don't really watch movies. I love to see like a half-hour doco for me. I love it. I can
Me too.
get my brain into that. So the recent thing that I saw about the planets affecting the weather is you got 3 big planets, or three of our planets near the sun. It'll create flood.
Right.
So the next 4 or 5 years, we're going to have more floods.
Have you studied this? It's just from YouTube rabbit holes?
Well, I suppose I got to that kind of thing via my intense interest in UFOs and aliens.
Ooh.
Yeah.
We've got to get into that.
Yeah, so I've been like that since I was a kid.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's do your musical stuff and stay on and then we'll talk about UFOs because I love that
Yeah,
shit. Okay.
yeah, because I'm very divergent with my brain. It just goes all over the place.
Well, I'll try. My job
Conversations.
is to try and keep us on somewhat of a continuous path. So let's go back to the music.
Yeah.
Right. You find Symphony of the Sirens. You find what's it called? Pipes. The place on in the Curtin Building. No, it wasn't the Curtin Building.
Pipe Imports.
Pipe Imports.
Yeah, that's the record store. So that was the big opener of my mind when I realised you could use tapes to make music. You can use tape loops. You can use anything.
Yeah.
You got a microphone. You can use metal. You can bang on a piece of paper, see what sound you get.
Yeah.
So that sort of opened up my whole thing too. And there was a person in the Industrial Culture Handbook, which I bought from Pipe Imports, called Zev. And Zev was a metal percussionist who used to, sort of create very basic structures out of industrial refuse, springs, girders, sheets of metal. And I saw those black and white photos and I got my hands on one recording. It was a mixtape. And that's when I thought, I really want to do this. So I went from studying ceramics for the first year of my degree to doing metal sculpture.
What uni is this at?
This was at Victoria College, Paran campus.
Oh, Paran campus, where Swinburne is
Swinburne
now?
is now, yeah.
So then, and industrial music, does it ever have a moment where it becomes quite popular, or it's always something that's just been fringe, you've really got to dig for it?
The most popular groups or entities would be, say, Throbbing Gristle from Britain, Einstürzende Neubauten, Germany. There was Laybach, I don't know where they're from, European. Test Department, SPK in Australia were huge. They were very influential.
Where were they from?
They were from Sydney, and they did a very well-known underground performance in the brick kilns near Tempe, which is now sort of like a site, a bit of a historical site and a park where a lot of punks have gigs.
Right.
They do the punk picnics there.
Yeah.
People like Jay from he does the Inner West Noise Fest every year. Inner West Noise Fest in it's usually at the Mosh Pit in it's not Newtown, further down. I don't know. It's like Tempe area. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the industrial sound was its own sound. Did it exist as an extension of sort of the punk movement? Because obviously it's sort of very anti-music, anti-whatever.
Well, see, some of this also came out of the Russian constructivists. You know, it started the 1900s, around 1912, 1911, 1913. The Art of Noise Manifesto was written around 1913, 1914, and that sort of came out of futurism. So there's a lot of crossovers of styles. And with art movements, they never abruptly end or start. They're often overlapping. And noise has kind of like consumed the industrial side of music, where you've now got like some of the entities that I perform in, Pubis Mons and Attrition E, we're labelled as industrial noise.
And you embraced that.
I'm fine with it, yeah. I mean, I really like noise. I've sort of stepped back from music and gotten more into noise. And I had a very profound experience. I went to America on a very long tour in a bus full of 3 other guys. And we started off in San Francisco. We went up to Portland, and we ended up down in Florida. And we did all these stops along the way. And I started off doing blues and finished off doing noise. That was my plan.
Right. And was it a seamless journey?
No.
Because you had it mapped out. That's what you were going to do.
I did. I had it. I was my main gig that I didn't want to miss, because it gets chaotic on the road. You miss. In America, you don't know how big it is. It's like Australia, and you underestimate how long it's going to take you to get there.
Yeah.
Because you're not driving across desert roads. You're driving through, lots of small town cities. You've got to slow down.
Yeah.
So when I got down to, I did a gig at the Crossroads, a blues gig in a little town called Clarksdale, Mississippi Delta, and that's believed to be one of the official locations of the Crossroads of the blues. So I don't know if you know that story of you go to the Crossroads and
blues. Explain it to me.
So this is where the Rolling Stones and bands like early rock and roll bands got very much influenced by the blues and the stories of the blues and the myths and the legends. So one of the main legends is you go to the Crossroads at midnight with your guitar and you hand it to the devil. But you've got to do the deal, and that is, you get a really well-tuned guitar and you become a great guitarist, but you have to sell your soul to the devil. And one of the most famous blues singers and guitar players, Robert Johnson, that was his story. He grew up on the plantations in Mississippi, and he used to borrow the elder people's guitars, like Son House. He often borrowed Son House's guitar and was told to be quiet, you're making a racket, you can't play. So he disappeared for a year, learned how to play, and when he came back and he blew everyone away because his skills were amazing, they said, how did you learn to play? He said, well, I went to the Crossroads and I sold my soul to the devil. So that myth just carries on. So I wanted to go to the Crossroads, except I took a banjo, a bespoke banjo that I made. It had a fishing reel on it and all these little bits and pieces that I used to pluck and make sounds while I'm singing my stories.
Yep.
And it's also really hard to sing blues in an Australian accent. You got to consciously not sing in a American accent.
That's a whole rock and roll sort of thing from that early rock and roll era, because it was so American.
Yeah. So I actually nearly lost my banjo that I'd planned this whole tour around, because I sent it rather than taking it on the plane with me, because I've heard all these stories about artists being, denied access to America because they're traveling with an instrument, they don't have a green card, all this sort of stuff.
Not to mention yours would be not look like your regular instrument, which they could think it's a weapon or anything.
That's right. I've been pulled over many times at Heathrow, at LaGuardia, many airports. And working with metal in my earlier instruments made that difficult. So when I sent this instrument to 3000 MacArthur Drive, Oakland, California, I dropped a zero.
Oh, 300.
I sent 300. And then I somehow I realised just before I was about to get in the car to go to the airport for it in the morning to catch my plane to America. And I'm like, what have I done? You're going this way. The instrument's probably going to come back the other way, return mail. So I got there and I rang them for like 10 days because we were in San Francisco staying in the Mission for about 10 days. And eventually I did one gig. I had to go and buy a ukulele because it was the closest thing to this thing that I built, the neck and everything, the size of it, the tuning. So I did this horrible gig, first gig in America with a ukulele. And then I finished because I just wanted to get through the gig. I was so embarrassed. And then I saw my case come through the door. This guy was carrying it. And I went up to him. I said, is that my banjo you got in your hand there? He goes, are you Rod? And I went, yeah. He goes, I'm Edward Shocker. And that was the guy that I'd meant to send it to. And I'm like, how did you get the instrument? He said, I live at 3,000, but I work at 300.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, this is no bullshit. It went into his mailbox because I'd looked it up on Maps, Street View.
Yeah.
And it was just this bit of grass. And I thought I'd sent my bespoke instrument, which I need to do all my songs and to do my noise later on. I sent it to an empty piece of grass. And it was the grounds of the school where he worked at the college. And it just went straight into his mailroom.
You got lucky. Wow.
I've still got that instrument.
Man, yeah. So then you go on the rest of your journey, and then do you go and sell the soul to the devil?
Yeah, I went to the Crossroads. I was 3 hours late for my gig. I was meant to play in the morning, and I totally missed it. So I hung around the town at the little office there, where the organisers were, and I hung around there for about 2 hours waiting. I thought, look, you just got to accept the fact that you've blown your opportunity, put your tail between your legs and just go and watch everybody else play the blues, and just learn from it. And then I got to the last little juke joint, they call them. They're like a little pub, little bar. And there was a guy out the front and he said, how you going, man? My name's Dingo. And I went, Dingo? That's an Australian dog. And, don't you tell me what a dingo is. I know what a dingo is. And I'm thinking, God, these people are so extreme, aren't they? And he goes, what you got in that case there? You show me what's in that case. I said, I've got a banjo in there and I've just missed my gig and I'm a bit upset because I've come all the way from Australia and I've blown it. He goes, nah, but you get in that, you go in there, you show me that banjo. You walk in that door there, you show me that banjo. So I just went in there and I put it on a little stool and I opened it up and there was just like, oh, people like, oh, what is it? So they let me do my gig and there was a band already set up, ready to play. And I nearly knocked over the guitarist's beer and his guitar. I just sort of quickly fixed it up, looked around, no one was watching. And then they got me a stool and they got me an amp, they plugged me in and I just did my show and it was amazing because I thought...
meant to be like that.
I suppose so, in the end. I thought, where's someone's going to start throwing a rotten tomato or eggs or bottles at me or something.
But you got there.
Yeah. Got paid for it too, yeah.
Wow. And it wasn't supposed to be where you were at. It was all...
Nah, it's a totally different venue, totally different time.
Well, there you go.
I just went up to the organiser and said, I did my show, where do I collect the check? And because I wanted to make sure I got paid for that because I went to a lot of effort,
Obviously.
Because you don't always get paid as an artist, I don't chase it, actually. I prefer not to live off my work.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've done that before.
Yeah, and it's a lot of artists are like that. They have their job so they can be pure with their art.
That's right, and that's what I want to do,
Man, what an amazing story. Let's go back to your schooling years when you
horror.
You went from ceramics to metalwork.
Yeah.
Okay, and then was that because of sound or just because you liked metal?
I liked metal. And a lot of my big sculptures got damaged in the kiln by someone.
Right.
And they were an ex-student, actually, and I was really annoyed. I thought I put so much effort into those things, and they didn't crack because of the way I'd made them. So I thought, I want to make something that's durable and it's going to last and it won't just crack. after I put all the time into it. And my dad also had metal stuff in his shed. Mm-hmm. I never really touched it when I was a kid. He used to sell, welders and gas equipment for CIG back in the 80s. But I was always a bit scared of, he used to show me all the safety videos of people getting nails in their eye and, metal stuck in your eye and stuff.
He was probably trying to scare you off fucking around with the stuff in the garage.
Yeah, he didn't want me to get in the garage, basically. Yeah, we had a big blue one night in there. So, I just thought, I really want to give metal a try. And it just seemed to be a little bit more interesting at the time. So I went for that, and I'm glad I did. I ended up having to make a folio that wasn't really I was happy with. I ended up having to make a folio in my last year just to pass,
right?
To keep the lecturers off my back.
Practical applications for metal work.
Yeah. It was because I wanted to use all sorts of different materials, and I was working with volume and mass, and they were all into linear structures, abstract steel assemblage, and my grades weren't getting anywhere, and I was just turning up doing the same amount of hours as anybody else. And I realised, okay, it's a game. I've got to play the game. I wanted to get my piece of paper because I'd spent all the time there. So I just produced the folio. I was still happy with the folio, but it wasn't really something that I would say was my work. So when I got out of art school, I rebelled and I started making furniture because I wanted to have enough technical ability and skill to make instruments. So it's a very roundabout approach. So I set up a little, I started selling tables at a shop in Gravel Street, Paran on consignment. So I'd make something, just put it in there.
All metal?
Yeah, mainly metal, glass tops, Sometimes I'd put a little bit of resin in there.
Yep.
Just to make it look different.
Something that you would like, or you thought people are going to buy it? Was it was it art for you, or was it?
It was industrial furniture, so it was something I liked. Yeah,
okay,
and
yeah.
I was taking it. There was a lot of when in the 80s when the textiles industry collapsed, there was a lot of machineries that were just discarded onto the streets around Paran, Richmond. Yeah, along the river there.
Yep.
And that went on for a few years, and I ended up turning that into a business. I would go and get these machines, take them apart, make furniture out of them. And I had an exhibition after art school, and it was the day of the opening of the exhibition was where everyone was jumping out of the windows in New York because of the stock market crash. So that was terrible. I sold one thing to a girlfriend.
That, late 80s? Yeah,
that was like 88, 87, I think.
Yeah.
I always get mixed up between...
Yeah,
because the summer break, and I sold one thing at a discount to a girlfriend. The rest of it didn't sell, so I decided to do the markets, and then I went into making small things and a bit more mass production. So it's a cross between sort of like cottage industry. You try and apply mass production to a backyard situation, and you end up. With crafty sort of cottagey stuff.
Yep.
And then I just built up my tools. So I did that for about 9 years with the furniture and the sculptures. And on the side, I just would make little instruments and just try and it just sort of built up from there. And then my wife got sick of the shop. So she went into doing something else, into IT, and I went into teaching. But I kept all the equipment for the metal work.
What kind of teaching did you do?
Well, I started off as an art teacher, but then they couldn't get woodwork teachers, so I became a woodwork teacher. But I was only ever really one step ahead, for the first couple of years. I hadn't really, and then because when you're a teacher and you've got a stable wage, you can get a loan, So I bought a PA, bought some amps and stuff, and then also got a house loan, with my wife. So, teaching, you had big gaps. I could rely on that money and just do whatever I want. And that's when I realised I don't want to live off my work anymore. I just want to be able to make what I want to make and try and develop my own thing, my own. So the instruments then became these big sculptural kind of volumes, and with, you know, like a barrel vault with strings stretched across it, you know, high tension, lots of little things that you might pluck with your fingers, like an mbira or a kalimba. Combining a couple of instruments into one, and they had, because there was so much metal on there, they had a lot of resonance. They had this kind of internal reverb. And then I did that for quite a few years, you know.
And that is, I think, a really important thing for any artist. When you can figure out that the best way to make your art is to not rely on it financially, you're going to make better art.
I think so. Sometimes, like when I was doing the furniture, it was design. You've already got constraints. You've already got considerations that you've got to work with when you're designing and making something for someone else, because they have an input as well. And that input can be either good or bad, depending on how you manage it. And I think that was also the death of my business. People started coming in and wanting things made to order. And you'd be halfway through and they'd ring up and say, oh, look, I've changed my mind on this little bit over here. And, oh, God, I've already quoted it, you know?
Yeah.
So...
And is that going to change the whole way that it distributes weight? Is it going to be functional? There's a whole lot of shit.
You don't let people get into your brain when you're an artist. You're the brain, you're the artist. You've got to make all the decisions. You've got to think it through and develop your work. And that's another thing with also writing grants. If you want to get on the grant bandwagon, which I've tried to do, I've had a couple of goes at writing grants. I've been successful on a couple of occasions. It is a compromise. Because they choose work that they like, right?
Yeah.
So they don't choose it because you know you're dedicated to your art and you're following it to the nth degree.
Yeah. What I've heard from the grant writing process is that the hardest thing is getting the first one, because once you get the first one, you're on their radar and they're more likely to give a grant to someone they've already given a grant to.
Yes, it's a weird thing. They call the people that apply all the time, they call them perennials at Australia Council for the Arts. And I've got no problems with people getting grant money. I don't care. There's a lot of controversy about it. You see artists getting, you know, money for things that people don't agree with. Well, you know, look at how much money's wasted by the government and by business.
Yeah.
Projects that benefit very few people that cost millions of dollars.
Yeah, when you think about stuff like that and like public art and grants and things like that, like I think of something, because I'm a bit younger, but the Yellow Peril, there was so much controversy about giving somebody this, and the public didn't understand it, but now it's so iconic and cool. It's like it was just ahead of its time, but Australians couldn't understand giving money to art that was subjective.
Yeah, and Blue Poles was another.
Yeah.
I met Ron Robinson Swan. He came to Paran. I think it was my second year as a student. We used to put our work up on a Friday night. You'd have a first year, second year, third year student would put their work up and you'd stand around with a cheap cask of wine and just throw criticism at it. And that was great because you had to learn how to talk the talk and, you know, walk the walk. And I've actually found that good training because I learnt to be more analytical and to think about the framework that you've got to work within. You know, because every art, every type of art, whether it's weaving a basket or it's got its own rules, and you either work out how to work with the rules or break the rules.
And that's the hardest part. Because safety with music, with art, sticks to the rules.
But I think the hardest part is listening to yourself, trusting yourself.
Yeah, that's like that whole thing that everyone's an artist until you grow up and then you decide that you're too worried about what other people think and you conform, you know? Kids don't care. They'll draw whatever they want.
All the primary school kids' drawings end up on the fridge. When they get to high school, you never see their artwork.
Yeah, except for a very small handful.
Yeah, and usually because that child can draw in a very realistic manner. So it's like, ooh, look at the skill here.
Interesting.
Yeah, I saw a lot of kids' potential just being wasted as a teacher.
In
That
what
used to sadden me.
capacity?
It's the kid would come up they come up and show me something that they'd just done, and wow, this kid's a natural. Look at the proportions. They haven't even thought about it. They're just doing it. Look at the colours. And then you try and encourage that child to, take an interest in art. They don't have to do it for a job. I wouldn't encourage them to do that. But to have it in your life, it enriches your life.
Yep. But they just find other things and they...
Yeah, the parents talk them out of it, or, they become an accountant. I've seen it so many times.
Sad.
As a lecturer too, because I've done a bit of lecturing at RMIT and Australian Institute of Music, and people are often discouraged and go in this direction instead.
Yeah.
I think you'd be better off doing that.
It's safer.
Yeah, the whole safe thing.
Which nothing cool ever comes out of safety.
No. I just was. Don't worry about it.
No, tell
I'll
us.
move on. Oh no, just those road signs. Because I was following the road signs down here, the big green road signs.
Yeah.
And that was a British designer who thought of that. Well, back in the 50s, it's become a standard.
Yeah.
And that was a graphic artist, sort of like creating this whole sort of language and safety road design system for the whole world.
And it works. So yesterday I was on the ferry with my son.
Yeah.
He's 5 and he's just learning to read. He can't really read.
Yeah.
And he said, Dad, why is there a warning sign there? What have we got to be careful for? So he's learnt the language of yellow and that
Yes.
means there's potential danger, which means that it's translated to someone who can't read.
Yeah. Well, it's just like the language of graph. That the way of doing a tag or the pressure of the distance of the can from the wall and all that sort of stuff. That's a language as well that people learn to identify with.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. You could give a marker, and in that book there, I've had almost 100 guests write in that book. You could give them all the same marker. They can push down on it lightly, heavily, do a zillion different things with the same instrument.
That's right. And it's the same with playing a guitar. You can give the same guitar to 20 players, get them to play the same song. It'll all have its own variation.
Yeah.
Because of the way they play.
But it sort of takes an artist to understand that, because a lot of people that don't have that mindset is going, oh, it's just the same song.
Yeah. Or even worse, when it's like, this whole style, every song sounds the same.
Yeah, you want to pick up on the nuances and the little things inside the songs.
Yeah.
So then after you finished you didn't finish, you decided to not monetize your art full time. You had another way of making money. Then you can dive into your musical production stuff more, making your own instruments. Is that when you start to go into the drains and start to explore a little bit more with different places?
I first went into a drain in Melbourne when I first came to Melbourne.
Right.
But I didn't join the Cave Clan for maybe 10 years later.
You just liked sonically what it was about.
I had a little room at a student accommodation. It was in South Yarra, and it was right near... It used to be the old vacuum cleaner factory, Electrolux. And then right near that...
Is that like on the train line?
Yeah, there's a train line there somewhere. No, it's east of the train line.
Right.
But it's right near the Anzac, the famous Cave Clan drain in the chamber.
Yep.
I was actually like one wall away. So the car park where I was, when I used to go into the car park underneath this abandoned factory, the power was still on because they still had lights and there was power points. So I used to take in the reel-to-reels and muck around with it. And then one day I just thought, I want to try somewhere different. Ended up on the entrance to the Anzac drain, which was down on the river about 500 metres away. So when I was a kid, I was always into exploring, going and riding my bike, waiting for the big freight trains to go past, jumping under the bridge, listening to the sounds, the rumble. And then I used to go into the old butter factory when that was abandoned and take photos. So that I've always just been interested in exploring. Yep. And when in Melbourne, there's a lot to explore. I still do it. Mm-hmm. I still look at, and then I had that shop in Smith Street, Collingwood. I closed it around 96, 97. So I had that for about 4 years, and I had a basement. And one of my mates from art school, who I used to, just play the guitar with him, he had moved back to Melbourne, and we started going in the drains together, and that was Pagan. His drain name is Pagan, Craig Richards. He's now passed away, unfortunately. And we went into this little drain, sort of down where I used to get all the old weaving machine parts. And Craig, being a bit more academic than me, started reading all the graph and these little stickers from the Cave Clan and little tags saying, contact this post office box. And then one day we did, and we got this Drano, and we're like, wow. And I just thought, wow, we're going to go down and record sounds in there.
Yeah.
And ended up just, meeting everybody. It was a great social thing. But my ears were always open, listening to the sounds, listening to what's up ahead, what's behind. Because the sound in the drains, they can travel for miles. And that's always been something I've been really interested in with Cave Clan.
Yeah, distance.
Yeah. And then, so Pagan and he used to play the didge, and I'd play my bits of metal, and we'd have little tape decks that had like pre-recorded, noises on them, say from a keyboard or something. And we'd just throw it all together in this space and let it echo around inside the space. That was pretty much our style.
Would you record it or just?
Yeah. I've got recordings way back. I've got all the early experiments that I did with reel-to-reels and tape that I did when I went to art school, and then from then on, I've got it all in a hard drive.
Wow.
So I took everything off a mini disc, CD, CDR, reel-to-reel, cassette, any medium that I had recordings on, I put that all, re-recorded it into a computer, and then it's all digitized everything. Yeah.
When you're jamming there with Pagan, was his name?
Yeah, Pagan.
And you are making noise, essentially.
Yeah.
Is there any rules? Can it sound too melodic? Can it sound too on beat? Is the only rule to not follow the rules? Like, I'm trying to get my head around it.
Well, when I first started doing stuff with Pagan, Craig, no, we didn't have any rules. We'd just go down there and just playing to the microphone in the space. So, yeah, we just do it. It was, and then later on, I got into doing improv, and I go to places like Make It Up Club every Tuesday night, and try and get into the improv circles there, like playing with this person, playing with that person, getting to know the different artists. And then, I learnt there was rules in improv as well, right?
It's like jazz, sort of. Or what are the rules of musical improv? Explain to I'm not familiar.
Really hard to explain. So, say if you look at it from a jazz context, you go off the page. You're not following the notation that's on the page or what you've learnt. You're doing a little variation of that. You might say pick some of the notes, and then you'll throw it out in a new melody or a new line. And then improvisation, I just think it's become more and more open as time's gone on. It's not just connected with jazz. There used to be improvisation was often written into a score in the past, into traditional music. But then, I don't know, it just sort of became, because everyone wants to control music. Music's kind of like the control of sound and the control of time, rhythm and melody. And improv is the opposite to that. You're letting things happen in the moment, in an instance. That's the main difference. It can be unstructured, but I think what happens is that people intuitively will find some kind of a structure while they're playing. Well, so it might be related to their breath, might be related to their heartbeat, but usually there's something.
And the thing is, humans like to synchronize. Naturally, we do it.
Yeah.
You'll notice, like, if you get a bunch of humans together and you clap, and everyone they start to follow a pattern, and people start to clap in time. So when you're trying to break those rules, it's hard.
Well, that used to happen in the drains all the time.
Yeah.
You get 30 people walking within a space of 500 meters, so many meters apart, and just you start walking, and that dum dum dum, that'll create something, or someone will just start, putting down a line or clapping or just yelling, whatever.
Yeah.
It's just a natural thing.
It is. And people kind of harmonise without meaning to. So when you're trying to not create that harmony, it must be hard.
It is. And that's also the challenge that I find with noise now, because I'm playing a type of noise, because within noise there's many different sub-genres.
Can you break some down? I'd love to learn.
Okay, so noise wall is just the whole time. And then you've got harsh noise wall, which is and it doesn't change. It's just like radio static that doesn't have any modulation.
Okay.
Or any other tone underneath it. It's just this solid band of hiss, multispectral hiss. Then you've got noise which is rhythmic. You might be using loop pedals or tape loops, and then it becomes industrial because it's got that. When you leave a record on, that rhythm is not a natural rhythm that a human's gonna naturally play. That's very circular and very fixed.
Yeah.
And it's a machine rhythm.
Yeah.
So, for example now. Because I've sort of stepped away from music, whenever I see noise being played with instruments, I'm like, ooh, doesn't look right, doesn't feel right. It might be great music, but because there's that musical element there, even visually, I'm like, oh, hang on.
And is that a conscious decision to move away from music and into noise, or you're just...
It is.
That's where your palette's at the moment?
It's both. For me, the trajectory into noise has been really gradual. Even some of the early tape experiments I did were noisy, and the instruments that I played, were noisy. If you listen to, say, I don't know, AC/DC, there's noise in AC/DC. It might be in the distortion on the guitars or in the cymbals, but that's not the main emphasis of the music. The main emphasis of that music is rock and roll. So a noise artist, you know what this is, don't you? That's on and off, the square wave. Well, the one right at the top where it gets clipped, that's where you get distortion. That's basically what distortion is. You're pushing sound through a circuit, and it gets chopped down by the resistors and the caps and the diode.
I was about to say that, but I'm like, I don't want to say the wrong thing because I don't actually know.
Well, look, I don't know either. I'm still learning.
Okay.
It's huge. Noise in itself is just huge. And if you try and look at it technically, there's usually very little that's written. You might get one paragraph out of a whole technical book on sound production, on sound engineering. And noise is usually considered to be a byproduct. So noise artists are always sort of hanging in that area where you've got the clip and the distortion, and then there's varying degrees of that. So you can use that distortion to abstract the sound so it doesn't sound like it was before. You could get an ABBA tape and play it into a noise pedal, like a distortion pedal, and have the distortion turned up so strong that you can't recognize the sound of that music anymore.
And that intrigues you.
Yeah, any noise intrigues me. Any sound intrigues me pretty much.
I've got as somebody who isn't that familiar with the whole noise realm, is it something that appeals to you because you like it, or you like the obscurity? No,
I like it. I like if I go over to my friend's place and they just put on a noise tape, that distortion just relaxes me.
Okay. Because a lot of people would make them uneasy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it makes my wife uneasy.
Well, I was going to ask that, but because And that's the thing. Like there's all different kinds of music that people are into, and I'm sure that you appreciate other kinds of music, but that's sort of where you're at. I for one don't like people I know are like right into the hardcore music. I don't.
Yeah.
It doesn't appeal to me. I
Yeah.
like different kinds of music, but to them that really speaks to them. I find that hard to listen to. Some people find poppy music hard to listen to because it's too.
To me, pop music is noise. Hip hop is noise. I find it hard to listen to hip hop because it's got such a strong beat.
Too much
cognitive dissonance. Yeah, and that whole rhythmic thing, it's just like, whoa, it's so strong. I've got to get away from it.
Right. Even like Public Enemy that are doing.
I love Public Enemy.
I was going to say that was going to be.
That's my era. Sorry, I've never gotten past Public Enemy or Beastie Boys or
But
Ice-T.
they were pushing. Look, Beastie Boys, Public Enemy, they were pushing the realms of noise in music though before a lot of people.
There was a compilation that came out years ago. Def Jam Records had a plane on the front, I think.
Yeah. So that well, the Def Jam Records record with the plane on the front was Beastie Boys.
Was it?
Was a Beastie Boys album.
Yeah.
Yeah. License to Ill, I think, was that one. But anyway, that was Def Jam, I think. But those guys, they were doing different stuff, as in like they were playing songs backwards, instrumentals backwards, using all sorts of different stuff.
Yeah.
And with the Bomb Squad from Public Enemy, they were jamming and throwing all sorts of noise into there, but they were doing the opposite to what you wanted. They were trying to make those harmonies out of nothing when you were trying to make those harmonies into nothing.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it is a bit like that. You can actually apply nothing to noise.
Okay.
There's a lot of nothing.
Do you like negative space in music or in noise? Yes.
Yeah. Like, there was a style that happened, say, early teens, 2000s, and it was very reductionist, hardly anything going on. It was called Onkyo in Japan and lowercase in Europe.
Onkyo was a brand of manufacturer.
Yeah, that's right. They made hi-fi equipment.
Yeah,
which is
my grandparents had an Onkyo like hi-fi. With different components. Yeah.
Well, there was a place in Tokyo. This was around 2003, 2004, up to maybe 2008. And they weren't allowed to make a lot of noise, but they wanted to make music, so they just sort of did this.
ASMR before it was a thing.
Yeah, well, ASMR, that's been around for years, because I've been doing that for years. I've been listening to brown noise, which is not, or it's sort of like this. It's got that bass in it. I use that to relax and to get to sleep, like a fan. I'll have a fan on sometimes.
That's very normal and natural.
Yeah.
A lot of people do. Yeah. Well, even with my son, when he was a kid, we had a thing that you push the button on the lamb and it went like, because I think that emulates the sound in the womb to make him feel at ease.
Yeah. And the sound of the sea.
Yeah.
So it is around, noise is around, but because we can't close our ears like we can close our eyes, our brain does that. It switches off. It's amazing what you don't hear.
See, I've got tinnitus from too many years of DJing, so I can't switch off. I've always got that noise in my ear.
You got the high one or the low one?
It's just like forever.
I've got the low rumble. It doesn't come all the time.
Yeah. Oh, really?
It might come after I've been on the freeway, like today. When I get home, I might get that ooh, but it doesn't bother me.
No, I was going to say you'd enjoy it.
Yeah. There was a time there where I thought, oh God, I hope this doesn't keep getting any louder or keep going like for too much longer, and then it just sort of. But I think if you do this at the back of your head, you'll get rid of your tinnitus. There's a nerve there. Just tap it like you're doing playing a piano.
Oh,
yeah, typewriter. Right. Just do that for a while.
Give that a go.
Yeah. And noise can also be very quiet. Noise music can be very quiet. I just use the term noise music to sort of bring it into something a bit more familiar.
Yeah, because I guess for a lot of people that don't understand or know your background, they they wouldn't. They would. So say I meet you right at the train station. You've got your you know.
I'll be listening for the train coming.
Listening to the train coming, hearing those metal gears grinding.
Oh, it's music.
Yeah.
It's music to the big ears.
And I see you with some musical sort of cases, and I say, hey, mate, what kind of music do you get into? And what do you say? How do you explain it to Joe Blow on the train platform?
Harsh noise. And they always go, what?
And then you say...
I just say, it's the opposite to music. It's not anti-music, but it's the opposite to music. Yeah.
And then they go...
It's an interruption.
Yes.
Of your thought process, of your existence.
And that is another thing, right? And look, it's hard for me to get my head around because, like I said, I've got the DJ background. I try and do everything in the fours.
Yeah, you're very syncopated with your musical mind.
With my musical mind. And even to the point, if I've never heard a song before and I hear it, I know when the vocal's coming and I know when... Because... We get trained 1, 2, 3, 4. This is going to happen. Maybe it goes 16. Then we go here. But you just want to go 1, 2, heaven. And this one's going over there because to catch people off.
Yeah, yeah. Also, it's hard. Say if you've got a history of playing music, because I'm self-taught, so it's a bit easy for me to fall into this. I'm not saying that I'm great or good at making noise or anything, but I've caught myself many times, and I'm listening to what everyone else is doing, and then I'll just sort of make a gesture, and it's kind of musical. It's in time. It's when you expect it to be.
Yes.
And so lately, I've been trying to get away from that by just like interrupting the process somehow.
Throw it off.
Yeah, like I mix when I'm with my bands. I mix live. So I'll bring them in, and it's basically we're interrupting each other as it progresses. So it's this kind of progressive series of interruptions, and yeah.
Because it's so...
No wonder people can't listen to it.
but it's not for everybody.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But when you find the other people that do get it, it must be like, fuck, you get it too.
Look, I organise a lot of shows, and I've been doing one in Port Melbourne under this bridge for nearly 30 years because I've been in Cape Town that long.
The Graham Street Bridge?
Bridge? It's near Graham Street. It's not that one.
I lived in Graham.
It's Ingle Street.
Ingle Street Bridge. Oh, yeah. I know. Mm-hmm.
So there's a little... there's dead-end roads underneath the bridge because the bridge goes over the freeway, and it's a funny little industrial area, and I've been running little shows there. We've got a generator. And we put out little flyers, like I bought some little things to show you. This is one of my early flyers. You may not be able to read it now.
Wow.
But I actually pulled that back off a telephone pole after it had been outside for a year or so. You know, here's another little one that's a very simple one. Yeah. So this has just got bridge written on it and the date. I would just go to a show or I'd have a show on or just meet people and just put that in their pocket.
Wow.
And not even tell them.
Entry $10. A Melways reference.
Yeah.
Love that.
That's how old that is.
Yeah,
I don't charge anymore. I don't charge for gigs.
No. Well, that's fair enough. Look, over there, I've got the whole Melways blown up into a big AO piece of.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I've got to pull it out and put it in a more prominent spot, actually. Yeah, there you go. So there you go. Bridge, 29th of the 5th, 21.
Yeah. And sometimes they get cancelled, you know, weather-wise.
But I'd imagine that would just add to the confusion.
Yeah, it's a funny thing. Like, I noticed there's a few other bands that are having gigs under bridges now. There's one in Flemington in the drains there and under a bridge there, and then there's another one out at Ted Whitten. The punks run that.
Oh yeah,
that's great. You know, because. You know, we've had troubles with live music in Melbourne. Remember the big protests? Mm-hmm. I think there might have been a couple actually. I went to one of them, where the inner city is getting taken over by people who buy expensive properties and they don't want to experience the culture and hear the noise and all the music,
which is counterintuitive. And that's someone I spent pretty much my whole entire life, grown up life in St Kilda. and we saw that happen a lot. Places that had live music licenses were shut down by apartment buildings that were built after the fact that this place had the license, which makes no sense to me. And then we see it happen in Collingwood, North Melbourne, all those areas.
Yeah. Yeah, Collingwood, like the tote, they suffered from it.
Yeah.
You know, and then we had the big C word.
Yeah.
Which closed everything down.
Closed everything down.
Yeah.
Tell us about when you first, yourself and Pagan were going into the drains, and first you saw the Cave Clan stickers. I think Duggo's give me one. I've got one up there. I've got a few Il Dranos. So you found them, and then what was that like? Was it like you'd been sort of searching for something like this? Underground, I know is a bit of a cliche term, but just for people that were doing different shit and exploring like you were doing already?
Yeah. Well, I'd heard of Cave Clan. I think I might have said, someone told me what it was. They said, they go in the sewers. And I go, why would you want to do that? You know? And then it just sort of happened naturally. We just happened to go down into this pipe, and it was somewhere different to record other than my basement in Smith Street, Collingwood.
And did they say you've got to have a drain name? Yeah.
We rode away to the post office box, and then they sent us the next dates for the New Explorers Expo, where you meet in one of the parks near Maze, and then you go down. You get a guided tour. Lucky you might get Duggo, because he'll tell you all about it. And it just went from there. Once I went on that expo, I was just like, wow, these spaces and all those beautiful black and white photographs from the Il Drano, and thinking, there must be a million places to record and get the sounds. And then I just started going in there by myself and turning off the torch and just leaving the microphone on, just listening. Getting over that fear of being down in this weird place by yourself.
But I can imagine somebody like you who likes the uncomfortable noise. You'd like the uncomfortability of being that. It sort of challenges you, pushes you in a different direction.
Yeah, I do like to be comfortable though. Like round drains are hard to walk along if you don't like getting your feet wet like me. Because you got to like crisscross, and you get sore, especially when you're getting older.
Yeah, there's a whole art to it.
Well, yeah, and the different shape of pipe in the drain has a different sound. Square drains sound different to round drains. Maze has got so many shape changes that you only got to walk 20 metres and you're in a different sound environment just because of the shape of the pipe.
And so then you could essentially play the same noises in different places to get a totally different frequency.
It's a totally different background noise, because what you're hearing is the reflective echo off the dimensions of that pipe. So if it's a round pipe, it's just got one dimension. So it gets a very sort of definite tone. But if it's a square, it'll have a tone, but it'll be a bit more muffled because it's got to bounce differently. And then if you get a shape, there's one shape in Maze which is a square with a round top. It's got an amazing sound to it.
Wow,
Yeah. So I made a whole album just in that one location once.
So when you say album, do you have tracks?
Yeah, have tracks. When I first started performing live, doing improv and using my instruments and sound sculptures, everyone was saying I'd go for about 40 minutes. Then it went down to 30 minutes. Now it's down to about sort of 20, but with noise, you keep it very short. It's like grindcore, keep it very short. 15 minutes max, because otherwise it just loses its impact.
Yeah.
Because what you do in 15 minutes of noise, you just pack so much into there. Into that space of time, more than what you would with music. Because music's, even though noise can have space, it's usually pretty dense, it's usually pretty packed with lots of information.
Do you have vocals ever?
Yeah, I've got vocals.
Yeah,
but they're very distorted.
Okay.
So you sing through cheap microphones to get that distorted sound. Yeah. Distortion is pretty much the number one effect. You can use delay and reverb a little bit, but then it starts to sound like music concrete or experimental music. So it's usually a bit more of a dry sound. And now with noise, it's pretty much made by electronic equipment, guitar pedals, mixers.
Do you like that?
Yeah, I do. I do because
You're not a traditionalist that it needs to be made with the found objects and the...
No, not at all. No. I still use found objects. Like on my table, if I'm playing, like in my little recording studio that I've got at home, it'd be about the size of this section. I've got stuff on the walls. I filled it during COVID. I've just built so many things during COVID. So when people come over, I'm halfway through. I'm just grabbing something off the wall, plugging it in, put it back again. You know, that might be halfway through the song. You know, or the track.
Yep.
Yeah. So now what we do, because we put everything out on tape, you work to that time format. So if it's a C60, you got 30 minutes on both sides. So you can choose to do a 30-minute track, or you can split that 30 minutes up. You can do 2 15s, or you know, a 10 and a something else.
Yep.
So it becomes more about the format in a way.
Right. So you're letting those parameters guide your art almost.
Yeah, just accepting it, because, you know, otherwise you're going to run out of tape.
Yeah. And I'm guessing there's never 2 takes. It's just, it is what it is.
Yep, pretty much, yeah. So often, if you haven't played for a few weeks, you lose your mojo, and you do the first recording, it's like, oh no, that's terrible. Don't do that one. Let's get rid of that one. We won't delete it, but we won't use it. We won't put it out on the tape. It just goes into the archive. Yeah. And that's purely from our taste. We haven't shown it to everyone or played it to anyone, you know.
So is there now with the internet, is there communities that you share this stuff to directly?
Yeah, but they were already established by tape trading.
Okay. So
years ago.
Explain the tape trading to us.
Okay, I'm not really good at tape trading, because you've got to. It is enhanced by the internet, you know, because you've got your email and all your different social media where you can contact people all across the world. But you'll have people, they'll set up, like my friend Ben, he's got a label called. Oh God, he's going to kill me for this. He's got so many different names.
Ben's Records.
Yeah, no, I just can't remember. Anyway, so you'll get someone to get their label, and they'll be in contact with another guy who's got a little label, and they exchange.
The other side of the world?
Yeah, America, like Japan. I've been to Japan. I go to Japan specifically to play noise. That's one of the centres, Tokyo. America's big in noise. There's so many places there to play. It's not funny. You could tour for 2 years just doing noise gigs in America and never complete it all.
Really?
Yeah, because America's vast, you know.
It is.
It's just a population, whereas Japan, it's sort of concentrated in the big cities.
Yeah.
You know.
So now, so I'm guessing now with the internet, do people just upload their noise and then you can, or is it still tangible? You want to get that tape? You want to? Do people stream it? Like
they can. They put it on YouTube. They would have done SoundCloud. Everyone's done all those different platforms. What's the other one? Bandcamp.
Yep.
You know.
Do people sample each other?
Not really, but there's always influences. You know, I want to get that sound. It's like, say you want to get the sound of Jimi Hendrix bloody pedal.
Yep.
You go and buy that pedal. If you want to get the sound of so-and-so, you look at their rig. You're not meant to do this, because that's personal to them. Yep. That's their rig.
Yep.
You know?
But you
don't copy it.
I guess you could be like, you reach out to, you know, Steve-O in the US and say, man, I love that sound.
Yeah.
Where'd you record that? I recorded this in a fucking a shipping container. No, he wouldn't know.
No. This is a weird thing with sound. Okay. With noise. It's a lot of it isn't not discussed.
Right.
Because a lot of noise artists don't want to intellectualize it. They don't want to sound like a page out of NME or what's that famous bloody mag?
Rolling Stone.
Yeah, or there's another one that's a bit more underground. I just can't remember the name. I'm terrible with names.
Okay.
Yeah, so like entities or bands are never introduced. They just start playing. You want to find out who it is, you've got to go and ask them. Or you've got to go and ask someone else. Who was that? Oh, they got tapes here? Go over to the merch table. It's sort of underground.
Right.
Yeah, and yes, people communicate on message boards and stuff like that. Used to be a big thing with noise, like in the 90s or the early days of the internet. But yeah, it's mail and mail order was a thing. But nowadays, it's still tape trading. You know, between these little entities of labels.
And I'm guessing that everybody kind of likes it being very underground and very...
Yeah, and this weird tape format. Like, why do you still use cassettes? Because it's got a sound. Because cassettes and tape, you can put you can soak a tape. You can put so much information on a tape, and it's DIY. You can do 5 in your backyard, or you can do 1,000.
Yeah, it's not pressing records.
Yeah, who wants to wait for vinyl? Takes years to get that bloody record back.
Yeah.
You know, and all the mastering. You can do your own mastering in this. This is another thing that I like to do.
Do you master it?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
So you'll be like, this noise needs to be louder than that one to make it more jarring to the listener.
Yeah, or I like to sort of leave it as it is, and I just clean up the ends, like just make sure that there's no, incidental sounds at the end, like knocking the mic or...
But isn't that part of it?
Can be. Yeah. But I basically just balance it and clean it up. Not clean it up, but just sort of, Spinal Tap, when you do it in doubly. I literally do that.
Okay. Yeah. So besides the actual making the music, you've made a lot of your own instruments.
Yeah. I've been doing that for like 30-something years.
And
yeah.
Is that you've made how many countless different instruments?
I don't know. I reckon I've probably done 1,000 instruments.
1,000 instruments?
Probably.
That are similar variations?
No, they're all different. Some of them might only be this big. Right? I've got one it's like a kayak. It's like a canoe.
And some are string, some are electronic, some are...
Yeah, that's right. So when I went to America and when I went to the Crossroads, I didn't meet the devil. I met this other guy called Johnny Lobo, and he taught me how to use pickups. He said, you do this, you do this, and you do that. Because I was having a lot of problems with sound, my sound getting drowned out by the drummer. Because my instruments were so resonant and metal, everything was going in there as well.
Right.
And they would feed back, and the sound guys, I'm giving them a headache. So I learnt how to use electric guitar technology. So I've been doing that for like the last 12 years. And that enabled me to make things smaller so I could travel. Yep. Get it in a little suitcase, chuck it on the plane, get over to Tokyo.
So do you name all these different instruments?
Yeah.
Tell us what some of them are called.
Membrane is the one that I nearly lost in so that's like a membrane. So it's a banjo with a hurdy-gurdy, so I call it membrane. I've got the HRO, the highly resonant object, which I've just used in the film The Rule of Jenny Penn. So I used a lot of metal instruments in that.
Do these instruments? Sorry for interrupting. I just want to say this before you reel off some more names.
Yeah.
Do they have commercial music appeal? When I say commercial, do they have musical appeal, or are they all noise machines?
Yeah, good question. The early sound sculptures, they're probably more like experimental music. But really good for soundtracks.
Yep.
Because of the resonance in the metal, and the way I used to play them. But because they're so big and clunky, and you can't take them on a plane, I just had to, use that more for film and do my own filming and record myself in my studio or down in the drain or something.
Yeah.
And
so, tell us about some of the other names. 'Cause I love the names. Just as much
the vessel is the big kayak canoe type thing.
And that's an old kayak you found?
No, I just built it all from scratch. It's all metal that I either go and buy it or I find it or both.
Right.
That was all constructed from stainless, so I went and bought all those stainless. I've got the.
Do you have the?
Spoiler is another one. Yeah.
Do you when you're doing this? Do you have the concept, or do you let the process? It finds itself.
No, I usually have an idea, and then often that'll appear to me just as like a flash of an image, like black and white, like an X-ray. And I've been working like that when I used to make furniture as well. So I get a linear design, I'll go into my brain. And
During the night, or when you're sitting down?
Just it can happen right now. Or I might see something that'll trigger it, I might see a truck on the highway and I go, oh, geez, I like that. little bit there. I might use that. Like one point, I was trying to make things that look like stealth bombers. I was trying to work out, could that be a shape? Because I like those, those stealth bombers with the weird shapes.
Yeah.
The
Very
anti-radar.
abrupt and very like,
Yeah. So because I'm into UFOs as well.
Yes, which we will get to.
Yeah. So it's funny how I ended up with the two movies that I did, where I've worked on soundtrack, little bits of music, or I might do the Foley work, where they asked me to bang the side of the instrument to make the sound of the crocodile hitting the boat, like in the Rogue.
Yep.
I did sounds for that. It's always the metal ones they like because they've just got this cinematic quality. I can't sort of describe it anywhere else. But with the other stuff, it's more of a dry sound with no echo, and it's harsh and it's hard to listen to. It's just too full on. They're not going to have that in the cinema. People will just walk out. You know. I sent them a few tracks earlier for The Rule of Jenny Penn because it was a New Zealand film, and I was sending my sounds to the composer. I'd go in the studio, record it on the Zoom, and then I just send it to him. But I didn't even edit it, and he would edit it and put it all together. And he'd give me a little description. I want a bit more like that, bit more like this. I can't do that with the noise stuff. It's just all harsh. It's just way too loud, really aggressive, really, really hard to listen to.
But for some, it's great to listen to.
Yeah. Well, look, I love it. I can listen to noise a lot, but at the same time, I have a lot of silence in my life. I don't have music on all the time. I drove here today just listening to the car and the road.
But do you enjoy that? Like
yes,
just then, we're in an industrial area here.
Yeah, I just heard that beep,
Beep, beep.
like that. I know that
that
sound. I've got that in recordings and yeah.
I was thinking you would pick up on that sort of stuff.
Yeah. So, for example, I just did a whole heap of recording of Japanese trains, all the different diesel trains, and recorded them off YouTube into a really old tape deck, which it was just distorted to the max. You can't even tell what it is. But every now and again, you'll just the distortion will just sort of drop off a bit, and you might hear a little beep like that, or a shunting sound or something.
Is there a community in Melbourne that really appreciates it? The noise community. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I suppose I've helped develop that community because of the gigs at the Bridge, and we were doing stuff at the radio bar. I also known a lot of people over the years from the Make It Up Club who've been very supportive, giving me shows, putting me up there when I wasn't, your typical musician.
Yep.
And
is there a piece online about you going to the Make It Up Club and doing a gig there?
Possibly. There was a film made by that was put out on the ABC.
Yeah, that's probably
that was Tim Stone. He was the producer, and that was Artists of the Cave Clan. So that's a little feature, and they went to the Make It Up Club and filmed my orchestra. So I had an orchestra with about 20 different people playing all my instruments.
Yeah.
And that was like herding cats. That was really hard. I did it twice, and after that, I just like, I think I've done this now.
Yeah.
But noise is a very hard thing to describe and to sort of like pin it down, and it shifts and changes all the time.
I want to before we wrap this up, we're gonna find some stuff around here, and we're gonna try and make some noise.
Yeah, let's do it.
Would you do that?
Yeah, I keep looking at that bloody concrete.
Yeah, that's actually
thing. I love that.
There's one here too. So what those things are doing is they are literally holding down, so when we bang the mics, it doesn't topple over. But they would make some cool sounds.
Yeah.
All right, so what else? Looks like you've got some other goodies in that bag, man. I want
Okay.
to see what else you've got in there.
So, because I'm into objects and objects that make noise, and because I'm into making objects, this is one of my tapes. So I make my own packaging. It's a block of wood there. There's a piece of wire that holds the thing in there.
And that's a tape, one of your noise tapes?
Yeah, and this is a noise tape where I've just gotten a tape like Tom Jones, and I've applied magnets directly to the tape and wiped the music off. So it's just like this ASMR crackle and hiss, and so that's for you, mate.
Thank you.
That's a bit amazing. of ASMR. You've got to turn it up because it's very quiet. It's
Yeah.
down on the noise floor of the medium.
I'm gonna have to pull down one of my boom boxes, and I'll have to have a listen.
Yeah, you'll have to
this.
turn it up.
Thank you. So, and I love the way. Sorry.
Sorry, no, yeah, keep going.
I love the way that they tell you keep the magnets away from stuff.
Yeah.
You know? And with DJing, they said don't touch the records. But by touching the records, by putting the magnets on site, you create something totally different.
I want to re-lathe my own records.
Right.
I haven't quite worked it out yet, but I basically want to make a lathe where I stick the record on there and I get a needle and I just go and cut my own grooves and then play that as music.
Yeah, and just it skip back. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do it, man.
So different vibrations on the cutter. That's how you make a record, especially when it's lathe cut. They're gonna, I might get my drill and put it on the cutter, and then hopefully that vibration will get cut into the vinyl, and then when I play it back, it'll be whatever sound that is.
Have you worked before with visual artists for them to try and cohesively work with the noise?
Yep. I did a thing a while back called Helmet Head with a guy called Anthony Magan, and Anthony worked on these things. It was called an Elmo. And it was like a projector, live projector, and he would put objects on the projector and he'd have transparencies and different things. And I had a welding helmet with an antlers coming out of the welding helmet, and I held up a screen, and he would project live onto my screen, and bits of it would go on my face. So he'd get maggots and make them crawl across, And I do tape manipulation live, and I just stand there and do that. So that was good. And also on the vessel instrument, the sound sculpture, that's got a central mast where I can drop another pole, a telescopic pole in there, and that's got a screen on there as well.
Yeah, cool.
And then we also do a lot of projections at the bridge.
When have you got another bridge? Have you got another bridge one coming up?
We're actually going back to Radio Bar for winter. On the 29th, so I don't know when the bridge is coming up again.
Okay.
But this is one of my invitations from many years ago. And so that was how I try to get people to a show. I'd make up little blocks of wood, and it's all about objects. So this is a tape. That's a reused tape. That was done by a label in Poland who put one of my tapes out last year.
Wow.
Negation Institute. So, I'm into all this sort of stuff. Like I've just had this reviewed.
I saw that on your Instagram.
Yeah, and that got reviewed in Noise Receptor Journal, which I'm very proud of. And here's another one where it's you can just slip the tape in and out like that, and it's a little spring clip that holds it in there.
Yeah.
Rather than plastic, typical cases. I do wood.
And I'm guessing everyone is slightly different. Nothing's the same.
These are about as repetitive as I can get. And my mate does the artwork, and we sit there and glue it all. We have a little workshop session.
Yeah. And is there anything that you can't make noise out of?
Good question. Rubber's hard.
Right.
Yeah.
But rubber bands make us.
Yeah. You can do it. You've got to get something to move. If you want it to make sound, it's got to move. Everything's a wave. When I'm talking to you, you're talking to me. Our voices are creating waves in the air, but we've also got waves coming out of our brains at each other. So when you don't trust someone, your stomach has just told you that the wave coming to your receptors in your stomach has told you there's something wrong with this person.
Yeah.
I don't trust them.
Yeah, bad vibe. When people say I've got a bad vibe.
That's it. The vibe is the wave.
Yeah.
So that's all it is. Noise is just a wave that's chopped up.
Yeah. It's interesting, like you're delving into engineering side of things, but everything has a frequency. You see those bridges that collapse and they just turn to rubber, like that sort of stuff. Everything's got a frequency.
I set off this little balloon. I filled it up with acetylene one day inside a bridge. I used to do paper bags with your breath and air, and then I tried acetylene, and the balloon went off, and I had it on a long stick. I had it down, about 10 meters away, and I had a very long stick where I had a flame on the end of it, and I had goggles on, and it went, boom. And then I turned around and I started walking back towards Pagan. He was at the other end of the bridge, and this wave just came through me, like this, through my body. Physically, I went to jelly because it was like pushing. It had nowhere to go. The force of that air and that explosion, and it was just trembling as it went down the bridge. And I thought, oh shit, the bridge is going to fall down in a minute. Luckily, it didn't.
Well, everything was okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'll never forget the sensation of that. It actually passed through my body, that wave. It was so physical.
Yeah.
You know?
You hear about people that go to like gigs for the first time and stand in front of the bass speaker and let it pass through them, and they're like, I just felt that vibration.
Yeah, and if you go around and touch the back of those speakers, the cables, you'll feel it. You'll feel the electrons running through the wires.
Yeah. But it is, I guess, making these electronic instruments, is it a dangerous game sometimes? You can be moving electricity through things and...
Oh, yeah, working on tape decks is very dangerous because that's 240 volts.
Yeah.
Yeah. But when you're building your pedal, it's low voltage. Usually they're only like 9, 12 or 18 volts. Uh-huh. Yeah.
But if you're just plugging things into here and there and this wire goes with here...
I was collecting old computer monitors that were just thrown out in the streets. Mm-hmm. You don't see them anymore. And I'd stack them up in a wall and have them all running. And then I'd get a guitar pickup and roll it over the screen. And there was all these sounds. I was just like, wow, I found this thing, this new thing.
Yeah.
So I was getting inside computers and putting, pick up some mics inside the computers and pick up all this crazy noise, like really harsh noise.
Remember, that just triggered me. Remember in like the late 90s when someone would get a phone call, the computer go boop, 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 and make that noise? Like that was a thing that just doesn't happen anymore. I don't know what that was. Different
probably interference.
Interference,
yeah.
But
well, one day I had this monitor sitting there and I had the cover off. I didn't realise how dangerous those things are. They're just like TVs, they're very dangerous. And I just I was trying to turn one of the pots. It's like a little screw. And you touch it with a screwdriver, and it can change the picture quality or the horizontal bands or the vertical bands. And there was just all these sparks just started circling around this bloody thing. And I was leaning back, and because I was leaning back, it actually there were sparks in my earphones because I blew the earphones up.
Jesus.
And because I was leaning back, it just went like that. And physically, I sort of got out of the circuit. I broke it. Never did that again. No. I stopped all that stuff.
Yeah. Dangerous, man. Yeah. So you've touched on the UFO stuff.
Yeah.
Do you know what? UFOs, and I've always been into it, or as people call them now, UAP, which, whatever. It's like a rebranding. You don't need to rebrand.
But why do you rebrand it?
Well,
to obfuscate.
Yeah.
Hide the truth.
Well, yeah. Well, tell us, why do you think they rebranded?
Because we got very good at building them.
We built them as in humans?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're very good at building them, apparently.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Not reverse engineering them?
Yeah.
Right.
We've reverse engineered them, and we've become very good at it.
So why do they need to rebrand? Because
more and more people started seeing these things and reporting them. So then the campaign to hide that truth and those facts was to through derision and laughing at people, ridicule. Because if you've got a weapon that's really good, and you're trying to hide it, and then people see it, you don't want anybody to know what that weapon is. So that's what's happened with the UFOs. They've become weaponized by the military, and all these companies that are private companies that build them that aren't actually connected to the government or to the military because of legal reasons.
Right.
They can act with impunity.
So because I've got my own theories on this, and I'm interested to hear yours. So you think the Roswell thing, that's a real thing where they recovered something? And were they reverse engineering stuff before that, do you think?
Definitely.
Right.
But Roswell's a tricky one because it's the most famous. There's a lot of bullshit that surrounds the truth. Mm-hmm. And I've just read a book by a fantastic American author by the name of Annie Jacobs. Is it Annie Jacobson? And Annie Jacobson has written books about Area 51, and in there there's a paragraph or two about Roswell. So it's believed that a lot more UFOs started arriving here once we started doing all these atmospheric bombings, high altitude bombings, and also we learned how to make them crash through radar technology.
So we were bringing them down. It didn't crash incidentally.
There's also a myth about Area 51 that it wasn't a UFO. It was Russian propaganda that they built a saucer-shaped object and took it up into the high altitudes and dropped it off a plane. Dropped it in the desert, and inside there were two people who were made to look like aliens through surgery. They were little kids.
Wow.
That's not my story. That's Annie Jacobson's story. I'm just repeating it. So Area 51's very confusing. What actually happened? And apparently, the object was taken to Wright Field, which then became Wright-Patterson Air Base, which is I think it's in Dayton, Ohio. I think is where Wright-Pat is. There was a crash in the 30s in France. In Italy, in Magenta, Italy, and the Italians didn't know what to do with it, so they gave it to the Nazis. And the Nazis were the first people apparently to start building UFOs.
There's
in the war.
There's that whole thing, De Bell or De Glock.
The Glock, the Nazi Bell. And there were other ones as well. The early ones ran on just normal AV fuel. And then they started getting into electromagnetic engines, and then eventually that led to the what do they call zero point gravity or whatever.
Well, and even in the wars, they were saying that the Foo Fighters they didn't know which side they were on, but they were there.
Well, I believe the Foo Fighters weren't human-made objects.
Okay.
They could have been weather phenomena like ball lightning, or they could have been from, say, what do they call it now, non-human intelligence.
Because what the popular belief is for a lot of people, I think, that do go down this rabbit hole, is that from another planet or time travelers or wherever they came from, these extraterrestrials or whatever you want to call them, came when wars were on the verge of happening or breaking out because humans were going to basically ruin the planet.
Yeah.
That's the theory that a lot of people subscribe to.
They're going to tear a hole in space-time.
There you go.
Because those vibrations from those explosions are so strong and they travel so far that you're waking up the neighborhood. And they're coming to see what the hell's going on.
And when you look at the state of the world now in 2025, you've got every pocket of the globe is fighting with each other. So if we're not seeing aliens soon, we're going to see them pretty fucking soon, I reckon.
Look, there's a lot of history about people meeting aliens. My favourite is the Australian story, Westall 66.
For sure.
Where 200 people from a primary school, including children and adults, witnessed a UFO come and land on the ground.
Yep.
And then take off again some minutes later. And then they were all told to be quiet because the military and the police turned up and said, don't tell anyone about this. They confiscated cameras. It's still talked about to this day. It's 50 years later.
Yeah. Jack Rowland, who's been on this podcast, he's actually interviewed the guy who did the documentary about that, and also one of the students as well he's spoken to. Because those students now are in their late 60s.
Yeah.
And I think the teachers would be, in their 80s if they're still with us.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, the other one is Frederick Valentich disappearance.
I'm not familiar with that.
That's what turned me on the UFOs. I was obsessed with that.
us.
So Frederick Valentich disappeared over Bass Strait, and it was in the 1980s, I think, or late 70s.
He's an Australian guy.
Yeah, he's an Australian guy. His parents were Valentich, so he's probably Eastern European, his parents were Eastern European background. He was training at Sale and he was training at Moorabbin to get his hours up. And he was going to go to King Island to get some crayfish. And he was using that crayfish pick-up and delivery as an excuse to clock up his hours as a pilot because he was training to be a pilot. And he disappeared over the water somewhere near Torquay. So they'd sort of like fly down to Torquay and then turn down to King Island. That was their route. And there was also a photograph taken of an object that apparently came out of the water at a similar time to when he made his famous radio call that he was surrounded by a green light and there was an object above him that definitely wasn't an aeroplane.
Wow. I've been down a lot of rabbit holes. I haven't heard that one.
It's a really good story.
What year was that, roughly?
80s,
Okay.
1980s. Because I remember my uncle had a horse that he named after it called Titch, Valentich.
Oh.
Yeah.
Because that is another whole sort of thing now that's become with the UAE, but they're like the unidentified submergible objects is another whole thing where they're saying that a lot of these objects may actually live under the water.
Yeah, there's now that they're talking a lot of, on YouTube. They're talking a lot about the so-called underwater USO base off California, Catalina Island, I think it is.
Yep.
But because I've been onto this for years, I've always had an interest in UFOs. I watch every YouTube thing it doesn't matter how boring it is, how unprofessionally made it is. I will just sit there and take the pain because a lot of it can be really boring. You don't know if it's the truth or not. I just accept it as stories. I don't try and say, okay, is it truthful? Is it lies? But there's definitely something going on. We've got a lot of hearings in America in Congress where people are becoming, witnesses, whistleblowers. They're talking. But my favourite are the deathbed confessions of people that worked in the military who had to be silenced through non-disclosure agreements. And because they're now dying, they've got nothing to lose. They can't be threatened anymore. Their families can't be threatened as much. And they're just spilling the beans. And it's really interesting.
Yeah. I'll have to I haven't
really
listened to a lot of those, but I will, yeah. Because I think there's a hearing going on at the moment now, but because there's so much going on in the news at the moment, it's not like it's a slow news cycle at the moment. Yeah. So a lot of this UFO stuff is getting swept under the rug on a fucking news sort of scale.
Yeah, it is. The big networks, they're just part of that that whole network of companies that owns the world. And if it's in their interest to hide the information because it keeps them in power and it keeps them in control, then they're not going to share it with anyone. There's a film that's just come out now by Stephen Greer.
Yep.
And he was a doctor, or he still is a doctor, and he's sort of
his credibility's been questioned a bit though.
Yeah.
Because a lot with that, like
you got to question all this stuff.
But see, this is the thing with all those UFO personalities, they all hang shit on each other.
Yes.
Like Lou Elizondo says that Stephen Greer's no good, and Stephen Greer says don't trust this guy, and they all, you know.
Yep.
So you don't know who to believe.
I know. Do you believe the person who's the eyewitness that saw something? I mean, it's good enough in a court of law. How many eyewitnesses get called up during court of law and have to swear in a Bible this is what they saw? In order to solve murders and other crimes. So people are. I mean, it's been handled so well by the authorities and by the military for so long. That it's all starting to break down. All the lies are starting to. Like people are going, really? Is that what you're trying to tell us?
But do you feel now? I feel like people are so untrusting of the government now, globally, that if they did, say the US came out and said aliens are real, all the skeptics like us would be like, they're only telling us they're real because they're not, and it's been the government the whole time.
And what are they getting out of it?
Yeah, exactly. It's
but it's happening everywhere. Russia's got their own history with UFOs. So is Japan. So was South America. There's lots of countries there. Chile. They've been very open about all this stuff.
Yeah.
Russia never had a problem with disclosing it. They used to encourage pilots and people in the Air Force to report UFOs.
Yeah. Yeah, we're in an interesting time, I think, with all that sort of stuff. And I feel like with everything that's going on in the world now, is probably if they do want it to come out and slip it under the rug, now's the sort of time they'll do it because there's other shit going on in news cycles.
The people in power don't want this stuff to get out there. Have you seen this? I'm going to really stick my neck out here. This is the weirdest UFO territory you could go down. Have you seen the MH370 footage? That coloured, that greeny heat sink type footage.
No.
Go and have a look at that.
Okay.
There's a fellow who's looking into it by the name of Ashton Forbes, and he's gone down the rabbit hole big time.
Yeah.
Go and have a look at. There's
Ashton Forbes.
Yeah, there's two lots of footage.
Right.
There's one that's apparently filmed from a military plane. It's got the heat colours, when you...
Yeah, the FLIR cameras, yeah.
Yeah, FLIR, that's it. Mm-hmm. And then there's another one which is meant to be from a satellite system, Sieverts, which I think is now redundant. Mm-hmm. And it's not actually footage, it's like an animation, a series of stepped images that's created by information given by satellites and satellite positioning.
Yep. All right, I'll have to look into that.
It's really interesting. And I showed someone on the weekend who's had a lot of experience in animation, compositing, and they looked at it and they just go, where did you get, what is this?
So what is it, without spoiler alert, so what does it sort of show you?
It apparently depicts what happened to MH370.
And I have to watch to find out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just kind of like you're watching, you go, what is this?
Okay.
It just came across my feed one day,
All right.
and I thought, what is this? Because it just looked interesting.
All right, I'll have to check it out.
The angles and the way it's filmed.
Yeah. Where do you sit on the simulation theory debate?
That the pilot was looking at a simulator?
No. I mean, like, that we live in a simulation.
Oh. Yes, I have spent a bit of time on this one. If it's a simulation, it's a bloody good one. Mm. It's pretty accurate.
It is, but do we just accept the reality we're given?
Well, reality is based on your perceptions. So you're limited by what you can perceive, what colours you can see, what you can hear. The human ear can only hear between 20 hertz and 20,000 hertz. A dog can hear. Your dog goes up to the window before you get home. Why? They can't hear you. What are they doing?
Yeah. Well, they can smell 1,000 times better than a human.
Yeah. So that's one thing.
And birds can see colours that we can't see.
Yeah, that's right.
There's, so we only believe the reality that we've got.
That's right. And also, you might be in a position where you're very lucky you can create your own reality if you've got enough money.
That's where we're going, aren't we?
Yeah.
Where do you sit on the AI thing?
I've seen a lot of artists struggling with it now. This scraping of images, people spending their whole 20s developing their artistic skills and their style or whatever, and trying to live off their work, and all of a sudden a robot comes along and steals it off them, and then reproduces it, 11% differently, so it doesn't suffer from copyright laws. I mean, I've had, when I was making furniture and candlesticks, I had my stuff ripped off from the markets and brought in from Asia, at a third of the price or whatever, So it happens. Yeah.
And look, even you joke about using it now because it's a redundant medium, but cassette tapes, people were like, when they came out, like, people are plagiarizing music, they're stealing things, this is no good for the industry. And you adapt it, now it just becomes part of making your art. Yeah,
but also, since I saw that article on the artist's work getting scraped, there's certain things I'll never put up.
Right. On the internet.
Yeah, I got work that's private. I'll never show anyone.
That's a great way to attack it.
And also, say with noise, the essence of this object is physical, but also it's ephemeral because there's the sound on the tape. So, and if anyone wants to rip off noise, what's the value of it?
That's it.
No one else has made any money out of it. Why would you want to rip that off?
Yeah, that's true.
So, but also AI. If you look at AI work, it's kind of
But not even
doesn't do anything for me.
No, and look,
Doesn't grab you.
no. But I
The
think
human's missing.
that'll all change with the way that they get better at it. But not even from an art perspective, just from where people are using it. People are becoming addicted to it, as in using it to converse with, like not just from an artistic perspective.
Yeah, like Smart Chat GPT.
Yeah.
Yeah, because someone threw my name in the Smart Chat GPT to see what would happen, and they got part of it right, but there's also parts that weren't right.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. So what it essentially does, and what the AI that we've basically got now with like ChatGPT and whatever, is that it scans the internet. And as we know, not everything on the internet is factual. So it will scan the internet and it will say, yep, Big Ears does this. And, you know, there might have been a blog post 20 years ago where Duggo said, oh, Big Ears, dickhead, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And then that takes it as fact and just spits it back at you.
Yeah. Gone.
That's all right.
You made me think of something. I get triggered all the time about where the conversation's going to go. But
Okay, no, but we've been covering a lot of ground.
yeah.
On your journey musically, you've gone from making music in the drains to making your own instruments, to making your own musical instruments, to making your own noise instruments, to making your own noise orchestra, to making your own noise. Where are you going from here?
Just more noise.
And that's the end of the journey is noise. Do you come back to music, do you think? Will you get sick of noise?
Don't know. I want to just let fate sort of decide part of that. I mean, you can try and steer things, but I like working with films as well. You know, I love cameras.
Yep.
Even still shots. I think photography is a beautiful art form, beautiful medium. So I want to film more, but it's very expensive because batteries, you know, cameras. At the moment, I'm really enjoying recording, and I'm with some people. I'm in a community now that I'm very affectionate about, and I love them. And I'm getting so much satisfaction out of just going in the studio and recording with these people, because there's a certain freedom with noise, the technological freedom as well, where I used to worry about hiss in my recordings. They weren't clean enough. They didn't sound pristine enough. Now I'm the opposite. So you never know where art is going to take you, and that's the beautiful thing about it. It's not the fact that you get paid or you're famous or whatever. It's the fact that you can do it. You know, like I'm planning a trip to Taiwan in November. I'm going to meet up with a whole bunch of people who I don't know them yet, but I just know that there's going to be an instant connection because we're in this small sort of community of noise, and there'll be lots to relate to.
So what would you tell younger people to do, or people that may want to get into the noise space but don't know much about it after they've seen this and they didn't even know it maybe fucking existed? How do they connect? How do they find these people?
Well, yeah, phoning people's hard because it's a network, and you've got to try and somehow get into that network, and you've just got to hang on the scene like a loving machine. That's how I've gotten all of my things. Any time someone's asked me to collaborate or make sounds for their films, like The Rule of Jenny Penn. I did a gig in New Zealand. It was just me doing a solo with my new instrument, and the guy came up to me and said, the composer came up and said, I want some of your sounds in my film. It's just total serendipitous. So
just get out there and do it.
Yeah, because you get to a certain point where just things are going along, and that's what I like. You know, I've worked hard enough now over the years, and I've known enough people, and I can, you know, set a date and say we're going to do the bridge on this date, and people come. It's great, you know.
Big ears.
Yeah.
It's been a great chat, man.
Thank you.
As we get close to wrapping it up, is there anything we haven't touched on or anything you want to talk about?
Oh, there's heaps.
All right.
Like me Black Panther that I've got down the road.
Big Black Panther?
Yeah, be about 40 kilos.
Really?
Very big cat. We had all these kangaroos with their heads chopped off, turning up on our roads.
Really?
The first one was right near my house. Second one was about 500 metres up the road. The third one, I saw the mother lying dead on the road and the joey crawled out. I had to grab the joey and then grab the mum and put the deceased mum on the bank off the road. The next morning, this carcass of this kangaroo's been moved up towards my house another 500 metres. And the next morning, that's when I saw the big cat there near the carcass.
So there's a wild panther in Eltham.
And then I was just talking to a guy this morning who was filming on my road for some TV series. And I said, you'll never be able to film the Black Panther of Eltham.
So
he goes, I've seen it. He said, I've seen it too, and my daughter's seen it twice.
Really?
It's around.
A panther?
Yeah, well, they're leopards, apparently, with melanistic colourings. You know, the melanin?
Yeah.
Which makes hair and skin turn darker.
But hang on. So how are is it? It's not native, right? So where's it?
Don't know. It could be a hangover. I doubt it from our marsupial cats.
Mm-hmm.
To me, when I saw it, because it was very quick, I got a feeling it's the Asian leopard.
That someone brought here.
It's come down. It's come down either when the Aborigines came down and island hopped years and years ago, or it's come down with the Trepang traders on boats or something. But there was also a naturalisation program that happened here in the 1800s where they'd bring all these exotic animals and they dropped them in a park, Royal Park, near the zoo.
So, yeah.
And I think some of them also might have gotten taken down to Wilson's Prom. So there are weird animals out there. It's not just escaped circus animals and mascots from the military that served here in the Second World War.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, because they're doing very well. There's so much. Like, I've seen the kangaroo population explode in the last 6 years that I've been in Eltham. There's plenty to eat. Why they just take the head?
There's kangaroos everywhere.
Yeah, and the last one was just the back legs and the tail. It had eaten the whole thing. And my dog just goes past it every. She rolls on it. She sniffs it. And that's like a year ago.
So do you reckon there's Yetis still around?
Oh, yowies. I'm totally into that.
Yeah?
Yeah. I don't know how many. I think the closest one I've heard of sightings is Sherbrooke Forest and Hepburn in Victoria.
Yep.
And up in the Stresleckis.
So
the hot spot is Blue Mountains and the hinterland behind the Gold Coast.
And what are we talking, like 7 foot hairy
humanoid
things?
Apparently in Australia we have two types. We have the big red ones. They get up to 12 feet tall.
12 feet tall?
Yeah, they're big and they're really wide.
And where are they living? Underground
they're up
burrows?
in the Blue Mountains.
Yeah, but where are they living in the, like...
No one really knows. I mean, they seem to be... like every now and again, people find these structures like a little house. So it'll be a long stick put in the fork of a tree, and then either side of that becomes the ridge line, and they put branches going down like this, smaller and smaller. And the yowie sleeps inside. It might throw some leaves on there. And there's also little grey ones that are shorter. Mm-hmm. You know what they do?
What do they do?
They're meant to rape people.
Oh, God. It's full on.
Can you imagine that? You're camping and all of a sudden this claw just grabs you through the tent and just takes you off.
So if we're talking about different species of yetis, or yowies I should say yowies, because that yeti's the American thing. Different species of yowies. What kind of species of extraterrestrials do you think are out there? The greys seem to be very popular. They're everyone's favourite one to say, there's greys.
According to the latest confessions from America, there's heaps of different species of... I mean, you've got to have bipedal, with their head on top and their eyes out the front.
Yep.
You'd have to have that. They've been reported.
But there's some... Look, it depends how deep down the rabbit hole you get, but some people say they are just future humans. Yeah,
or that they walk among us already.
Yeah. They're so similar to us we don't even know.
Yeah, like I've heard that 5G was meant to be a scanning thing to see who was humans and who was alien.
Oh.
Those canisters?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're meant to be, scanning.
So the government don't even know?
Don't know. They're just stories. I can't say it's the truth.
What do you believe in?
Everything. someone's thought of it, it's true.
Really?
It's an idea, didn't it? It's got to be true. Some people then are able to put it out there as a physical form, but these, because they say that a lot of the Bigfoot and the Yowie and the Yeti, because the Yeti's in the Himalayas, that they are they're shapeshifters. They can time travel, all this sort of stuff. Often UFOs are seen at the same time as a Yowie or a Bigfoot is seen. It just gets crazy.
It does. But it's like, as soon as you open yourself up to believing one of those things, you kind of have to open yourself up to believing all of it, because...
Just be open. That's be open-minded. The world's full of too many closed-minded people, and that's why we have conflict everywhere.
Yeah.
Because we can't see eye to eye, we can't agree, we can't accept each other for our differences. But I had a very strange experience in my early 20s where I was at home. I'd been living in Melbourne for about a year, and I'd come back home for the summer holidays because I was broke and I was still at art school. And I was in my old bedroom, and you know what sleep paralysis is?
Yeah, when
you can't move. Well, I felt like I was having a moment of sleep paralysis where I couldn't move. I wanted to move, and I felt this presence in the room that was just undeniable. And I've had it a couple of times, but this one time, I swear, I felt like I was being lifted up with my back facing down, and I'm turning slightly, and I went up through the roof of the house.
Out-of-body experience.
Yeah, I had that out-of-body experience. And at the same time, I can't move, and I'm trying to fight my way out of this thing because I'm scared. And I also felt like I was like a womb thing. I was inside a wet sack of some sort. And then I woke up. I finally got out of it. The most embarrassing thing is all I could do was scream out, "Mom," at the age of 20.
Yeah.
And I'm still having these, natal, prenatal, or postnatal experiences.
But the thing is, I've had similar sort of sleep paralysis things, but you can't scream. And the thing is, and at the time, you wake up, or you sort of come to eventually, or in the morning, you remember that thing and how scary it was. But you put it down to it was just a vivid dream. But
that's right.
Yeah.
But what about the implants that people find in their bodies? Little radio signaling devices. I haven't got one of them, I don't think. Hopefully not.
Yeah.
I've got some weird scars in the back of my head, though.
Yeah. See, and that's the thing. Like, even sleeping, people think that's you're teleporting to a different dimension.
Yeah.
Dreams. All sorts.
Have you heard
of stuff.
about the McDonald's sending ads into our dreams?
No.
That's the latest one as well.
Oh God.
I got too much time on my hands when I'm not making noise. Watch all these
dreams.
bloody YouTube junkie videos.
I love doing all that stuff too, man.
I get up early in the morning just so I can do it without being ridiculed.
Well, I listen to them while I'm sleeping, which I think is probably not good for me either. Because I can't just lie there because my ears will be like, eh.
Try that. Try the tape.
I'll try the tape.
Yeah. Hopefully it's above your tinnitus threshold.
Hopefully. The Cave Clan, the whole thing, intrigues me, and I love it. And I've had Duggo in here a couple of times, and you're going to be my second Cave Clan guest. Who else is a very interesting individual that I should try and get in here and talk to from the Cave Clan as well, that might have a different perspective on, say, Duggo, who has been in a couple of times?
Jeez, I don't want to be blasphemous here.
But it's just your opinion. It's not everyone's opinion.
Yeah, you could maybe try some of the new school people like Urbex, who aren't necessarily connected with the clan, but they... there's a lot of good photography that's coming out of all this now.
Yeah, I know.
There's an explorer by the name of Soy who's put out a couple of books all on people exploring, shots with someone in a drain or whatever. That stuff's great.
Yeah, for sure. So
they might be interesting to talk to, just even if you just talk to them about the process of putting out a book.
Yeah.
You know what I'd do?
What would you
I'd
do?
get some of the people who've been busted.
Ooh. Because it is an illegal thing in some capacities.
Yeah. Or some of the criminals that have been in the clan that went on to worse things.
Ooh.
I don't know how you get in a hole of them.
Yeah.
There's one guy who set fire. He stole a train. He's lit a big fire in Maze.
Yeah, is that Shadow?
I don't know if it was Shadow. I thought his name was Columbine or something. Something like that.
Even the names are intriguing.
Or Columbine or something. There's a town up there.
Duggo will know though, won't he?
Yeah.
I'll have to get onto him.
There's lots of interesting people in the clan. There used to be a lot of weirdos, and Duggo used to have to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
And like some people, criticised him for that. But it's God, I wouldn't want to have to do it.
No, he's a big dude though.
Yeah, but he probably doesn't like doing it.
Someone's.
Some people, they just go mad.
Yeah.
There's a lot of crazy people in the arts.
For sure.
There's been someone stalking my group lately.
Right.
For no reason. Who thinks someone said something, and it just goes on from there.
It's crazy with that stuff. Like, okay, let it go. Like, someone said something once, let it go. You know what I mean? Like, people are going to spend their whole life worrying about it, trying to.
Yeah, I don't engage.
No.
Yeah.
Good. And that's a good life lesson. Just let people be and do your own thing. Make your art. Make.
That's
be
my
creative,
whole.
Be positive.
That's my whole shtick.
Yeah. That's it.
Let me be myself, and I'll let you be yourself.
Yeah, you don't criticize. If people don't like your noise, you don't like their shit. Who cares?
Move on.
Yeah. Big ears. It's been a great chat, man.
Thanks, Maloney. Thanks for having me.
I am right now going to wrap it up, and we're going to make some noise.
Okay.
Yeah?
We're going to record it?
We're going to, for
Okay,
sure.
let's do it.
All right, cheers.
3,000.